Hi, welcome to Beebe Flicks. You might be familiar with our monthly book buzz program. We decided, while we're all stuck at home, to give you a peek of other entertainment options and what we're watching, mostly on streaming. Today, it's Bridget from the reference department, Jeff from the reference department, and Casey from our children's department. I guess, should I start?
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to start first with what I've been watching. And what I've been watching mostly is I've been rewatching the entire series of Lost, the ABC series that started in 2004.
Oh.
I would highly recommend it.
How is it to watch that when you already know what's happening?
So weirdly, knowing the mysteries enhances watching it because you now pay attention to the really compelling characters and the beautiful scenery, which is another reason to watch it right now. Is do you want to take a virtual trip to Hawaii?
Oh,
I know I do.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Is there a lot of, are you noticing like foreshadowing for things that happen?
There is. It's interesting how you can both see the cracks where they clearly didn't know what they were necessarily going to do, but also you can see that things really do work out a lot. I just finished season 2, so I still have 4 more seasons of Lost to go. And at the end of season 2, you really start to see that they've got an idea of where they're going. They just don't know how long necessarily they have to get there. But a lot of the pieces of sort of what you might think of as the Lost mystery are really there at this point. And yeah, and they still have the ability, they have this ability to make these characters that seem like very broad archetypes have specificity and interest that is just, it's a testament to the casting and the writing, which is one of the reasons why it's so compelling. Like there's always more, like even if the mysteries had fallen flat, which personally I like the ending, so I'm excited to see if I still like the ending, but I liked it when I first watched it. Even if I hadn't liked the ending, I think that there's enough in these episodes to really draw me in with the characters. Like I
used to like how they split it between, what was going on the island and the backstory. Each episode had a backstory that helped develop the characters, and you understood their motivations and their background. And
they're really good at making as they progress through, you see that sometimes they're incredibly good at making the off-island story, the flashback story, influence the island story, so where you can tell where both of those stories are going to end up based on what happens in the flashbacks. They're not always as successful at that. I won't say that every episode is perfect, but there's a really, when it works so well that it's just like television, and particularly episodic television at its best is some of these episodes.
I remember at the time that it was airing, some of my coworkers at the library were really into it, and I didn't watch it until long after it had actually ended, and we watched it on DVD. And it was so funny because everybody kept coming into work to talk about what had happened and what they thought, and analyzing all the little questions and details. And it was funny because I didn't experience any of that until years later.
Well, and one of the reasons why I started rewatching it is actually there's a podcast that started last year in the 15th anniversary of the premiere called The Storm, which is rewatching Lost. And they
15th anniversary?
Yeah, it started in 2004. So as a person who was in college then, it does make me feel very old to think about that. But so in honor of that, they started this podcast, and they do, the first half is just as if you had only seen that many episodes, and then they do a second half where they talk about everything,
how it ties in,
which has been really interesting because again, they're like, you can tell, they sometimes are like, you can tell that this is not planned, like that they don't know where they're going with this yet. And it's been, I've really enjoyed that, and it adds a nice counterpoint. I'm actually about to get way ahead of them because they're doing it once a week, which is nice if you have very little time and you don't have time to rewatch something. But right now I have all the time, and I just can't wait. We've entered what I feel like is the best stretch of Lost too. Like we're coming up on like the stuff I really like. So not stopping. I'm gonna keep going. But yeah, I think that it's like a weirdly great show to rewatch right now when you can't go anywhere, because you both sort of empathize with the characters who are stuck on an island that they can't, like, that they don't understand, they can't control. There's all sorts of weird stuff. As Sawyer, one of the characters, says that he at one point he was like, "I'm tied to a tree in a jungle of mystery." That was my best Sawyer accent for other people.
Service is it streaming on?
It's streaming on Hulu, which is an excellent service to have if you enjoy currently airing television, because they have a lot of the new stuff, and has a really deep bench of older television and award-winning movies. Like, I would say Hulu is a great service if that's what you're looking for. They have, particularly, I would say they have a lot of sort of recent movies that are very highly acclaimed. The ones I would particularly mention are Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Oh, I just saw that. It's amazing.
Yeah, which I know Jeff had watched, which is a beautiful love story from France about two women, and it's just gorgeous. I can't. Yeah, it looks beautiful. It's so emotional. I loved it. I highly recommend it, and it's on Hulu. So I absolutely.
It's worth mentioning how many of the services now are doing, because everyone is stuck at home. So many of the services are offering specials where they're showing either some or all of their content for free through the end of April, or whatever. And I know they're obviously hoping that if you try it for a few weeks, you'll get hooked and keep paying. But even if not, it's a generous way to offer some of their content for the time being when we're stuck at home.
I'll say one of the things I've liked about Hulu is I've had it for years, and I have the one with commercials. But a lot of the time, if you're like binging something in a row, after the first like one or two, they will stop playing the commercials.
Yeah.
So even though, like, yes, you have to sit through 90 seconds, 120 seconds of commercials for a couple times for the first couple episodes. After that, if you keep watching, you don't have to deal with that.
And I've noticed their commercials seem to only apply to the TV shows. Not
the movies don't have commercials. Like, they might air a commercial before the movie, but the movie is uninterrupted, which is very good. Yeah.
I started one of those services for Star Trek Picard because that's on CBS All Access, which I did not have, and they are doing a special through the end of April. So I signed up. And I'll just cancel at the end of the month, and we'll just watch that one season and be done with it. But it's nice because that's something we've been wanting to watch for a while, and if you don't have the right service, you can't see it without paying.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been very good. We've only watched a couple of episodes, but we're spacing it out so we can.
How many episodes is the season? It's not super long.
It's not very long. I think there's only 10 episodes total, and it's similar to other Star Treks if you like those, but it's also, I think, as you can imagine, it's a little more character driven than action, at least so far. We'll see what happens in subsequent episodes, but it's really good, and he's fantastic. So looking forward.
You can't go wrong with Patrick Stewart.
Yep.
Yeah, he's excellent. I would, if you do sign up for a free month of CBS All Access for Picard, I would highly recommend the CBS, and you might be like, is this show good? The CBS procedural Evil that aired last year.
Oh, okay.
It was a regular network show. It's kind of X-Files-y, but weird. Like, weird in an offbeat, quirky way.
Paranormal stuff?
Yes. So it's about a priest who is a believer and a clinical psychologist who's a skeptic, and they investigate miracles. It has Asif Manvi, who was on The Daily Show, plays another person on their team. The main person he was Luke Cage on the Netflix Luke Cage. I'm blanking on his actual name right now, which is terrible. Mike Coulter.
Yes.
That's his name. Yeah. So he was Luke Cage. He plays a priest. Obviously, you can see he's kind of a hot priest. one might say, if you know what he looked like. But he's on it. It's from the people who made The Good Wife. So if you ever watch The Good Wife, you know that it's like a legal drama, but they did quirky, weird stuff on it. And they go full weird on this one. It also has Michael Emerson, who for many years was on Person of Interest, the CBS procedural, and also is on Lost.
He was like a huge character in Lost.
Yeah.
I would say another really good one on CBS All Access, and it is usually on their, just their regular, but it's a bunch of seasons in, is Madam Secretary. I don't know if either of you guys ever watched that.
I've heard good things about that.
I fell behind a couple seasons ago, but I watched maybe the first 3 or 4, and I know they're on CBS All Access. And especially in today's political climate, they're really good. She starts out, I can't remember the name of, I might come up with the...
Téa Leoni?
Yes. And she starts out as the Secretary of State, and, has to solve all sorts of world problems, but both she and her husband have a long background in, spycraft and, working for the CIA and stuff. And so she does it, she gets stuff done, but it's sometimes it's a little off kill, like it wouldn't probably work in real life. But one of the things I really liked about it too is that it's one of the most functional families. They have 3 kids. It's one of the most functional families I've ever seen on TV because the parents communicate. They communicate with their kids, accept their kids when their kids make mistakes. They talk about things, and like there's just really good, like they do a really good job. They could have a lot of drama between the husband and wife, and they very deliberately choose not to. Like things start to kind of get dramatic, and then they actually sit down and have a real life adult conversation and are like, oh, well, this is just all a big misunderstanding, or we need to do something different going forward, but let's figure out what it is as a family. So on top of the cool, the really interesting political stuff, because they pull a lot from current events, or current events adjacent, they also do some really cool stuff with just the family dynamics and the people who come in and out and dealing with, having clearance and who doesn't have clearance and the whole 9 yards. So if you're looking for something that has a bunch of seasons, because I'm pretty sure it's still airing, that's another good one on CBS All Access to go back to. I keep meaning to and just haven't found the time. But
that's like the curse of like your life before is like, I don't have time to do that. And now it's kind of like you do have time, but do you?
Yeah, and I'm so many seasons behind that actually, like, I would really have to like super binge, and I'm
always afraid of starting a new show someone recommends because I see myself getting sucked into something for weeks on end.
The nice thing is that, I mean, like, they do have cliffhangers at the season enders, but it is a fairly easy show to like watch a season of. And where I stopped, they do a time jump before the next season. I know just enough to know they do a time jump. And so it was actually kind of a good place to pause for the time being because things kind of got wrapped up, and then they do the time jump for the next season. I think that was, I can't remember, I think I watched 3 seasons. So the first 3 seasons are kind of part of one story, and then I'm pretty sure there's a time jump, and I believe, and this really isn't a spoiler because again, it's an active show, like stuff, they're doing ads on TV. I believe she becomes president. I believe they skip the whole, like her getting elected, but I believe she becomes president, and then they pick back up with her as president.
I think you're right, because I recall seeing that as like in ads. So it feels familiar to me. And obviously,
if you're a football person and watch CBS at all, you're gonna have seen the ads a million times, and so I'm not spoiling you.
I do have to talk about speaking of binging things. I think we would be remiss if we did not mention Tiger King, which has out of nowhere become the top show on Netflix, and I can only imagine it's because we're all stuck at home. But it's one of those things. I did watch it. I watched it in like a day and a half, and it's funny because I hadn't even heard of it until like a few days ago, and I had seen something on the news about it and wondered what it was, and it looked weird, and it definitely looked like something I would absolutely not watch because it looked stupid and I had no interest in it. But we were talking about it, and so I watched an episode, and then I watched another and another, and there's 7. So I went through it like so fast I couldn't believe it. It is incredible. If you haven't watched it, you need to at least give it a shot. Just it's such escapism for right now, to look at something that has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on in the world right now, but is still riveting, insane. It's definitely not for kids, if only because of the incredible amount of obscenities that go on. The main character, which if you, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know the main character is this, and it is a documentary. This is real. This guy named Joe Exotic, who ran a wild cat zoo. You know, he kept lions and tigers and other kinds of zoo animals in Oklahoma. But I think the thing that makes it riveting is that he's gay, he's got a mullet, he's tattooed from head to foot, he's a gun-toting redneck, he's like the weirdest mix of stuff that you can possibly imagine, and he's got tigers. And he married 3 different men, 2 of them at the same time, and they weren't gay, which is even weirder. And then he had this incredible, like, years-long feud with a woman who is in Tampa, Florida, who runs a wildcat sanctuary. So she's an animal rights activist. And of course, the 2 of them hate each other. She may or may not have killed her first husband. He may or may not have tried to kill her. So the whole thing is just, it's fascinating. And if you like watching a slow motion train wreck with a lot of country music and mullets, it's, I keep thinking actually my pandemic hair is getting long enough that if I dyed it blonde on the side, I could actually look like him.
You're gonna.
But it's worth at least watching the first episode just to see like the flavor of it. And I bet like you probably, even if you think it's stupid, you're gonna wanna watch the next one to see what happens. It's great. And there's only 7, so you can be done with it like real fast.
Yeah.
So, Casey, what have you been watching? I feel like we just...
I've been doing a lot of Disney Plus, which is, you know, another good streaming, and honestly been doing a lot of sequels and rewatches on Disney Plus. No like TV binging, but we've been doing some of the Star Wars movies, which I've seen a million times, but it's a good, you know, relaxing. You know, you only kind of have to watch because I've seen it a million times.
Yeah.
Some of the ones I haven't seen quite as often. We've actually been rewatching the prequels. And you know, they're definitely growing on me as time goes on. I mean, I never like hated them because I was the right age when they came out. But the more and more I watch them, the more I enjoy them. We're also actually watching the, if you are a Star Wars fan and you have never seen any of the animated shows, I would highly recommend them. They are really, really well done. The stories, I mean, yes, they're technically a kid's show, but the number of times, so right before all this, I watched for the first time the Clone Wars series because they announced that they were doing a new season, a final season, which we have been watching and have been keeping up with, and it's amazing. But I hadn't seen the rest of the show because when it had come out, I didn't have the right TV channel. I didn't have the right person to watch with, you know, the whole 9 yards, and so I hadn't watched it. But we watched the whole thing, and the number of times we turned to each other, my roommates and I, and we're like, "And this is a kids show," because it really does tackle a lot of, and again, you know, probably pretty good in today's political climate, it tackles a lot of really interesting and hard topics about like colonialism, you know, whether or not, like, you know, just wars in general, like the, you know, kind of the ethics of and morals of war. It really hits some things that, you know, you wouldn't expect of an animated, you know, 20-minute episode kid show. But it does it, and it does it well. And
so these are stories that are like kind of side stories within the Star
yeah. So
Wars world.
the Clone Wars takes place. The animated series takes place between episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And we're pretty sure from trailers for the new season, which is about halfway. I think it's basically halfway. It's 3 arcs of 4 episodes each. The last arc is going to run in a lot of ways concurrent with Revenge of the Sith, but from kind of the clones' point of view and from the point of view of not the main players in the in the whole thing. And so again, it's interesting because there's this whole plot line through it, and that you see a lot in Revenge of the Sith, where all the clones, as they've been created, first of all, like, you're creating people, so there's a whole ethical thing there that they get very in depth in, but they also all have this basically computer chip in their head, which is what makes them turn kind of bad in Revenge of the Sith. And there's a lot of stuff dealing in both in this season and in the season right before this, dealing with them, some of the clones starting to kind of figure this out, and the cover up that's trying to be happening at the same time. And it's really, I don't know, it's just really, really, it's a really well done series. And that's up on Disney Plus. And their other show, one of the other animated shows, Rebels, which takes place in the days leading up to, like, in the years leading up to New Hope, so the original Star Wars, and like Rogue One. That's also really, really well done. Again, like all that kind of stuff.
I have not watched a lot of Clone Wars because I wasn't the right age, but I did watch some of Rebels, and it is so, there's so much emotion and like concepts and themes that are in this show that is ostensibly aimed at children, and it's dealing with complexities and real issues, and I thought that it was very well done. So I'm sure that Clone Wars is the same in that. And if people are interested, Clone Wars was run by Dave Filoni, who also a lot of people watch The Mandalorian.
Yep.
He has been running The Mandalorian, and many people do think that he's kind of the true heir of George Lucas, because they worked so closely together.
Yeah, he worked very close with George, because when Clone Wars came out, George Lucas still owned the company, so he worked very closely with him. Like, Clone Wars is kind of their vision together. And so, yeah, he really knows what's what. And the characters they introduce in both, in The Mandalorian, in everything he's done, The Mandalorian, Rebels, and Clone Wars. There's also Star Wars Resistance, but he was tangentially related to that because he was working on Mandalorian while Resistance was, and the new season of Clone Wars. The characters that they introduce in those shows, the new characters, are as compelling as any. I mean, I still love, the original, and like, the movie characters have a special place in my heart because the movies, and that's what I grew up on, and even like the sequel movie characters I love. But the new characters that they introduce in the TV shows are so well done. That they're, some of them are now, like, you get to know, like, a bunch of the clones, and now all of a sudden, like we're watching the season going, oh no, like, we're so glad that you guys are still alive, but oh god, your time is short.
Well, they've retroactively, I don't know, I always wonder how canon these things are, but they've retroactively, like, made it so that some of the old soldiers in the original trilogy are clones. Like, that's what they're saying, is like, these people are clones because they look enough like the sort of old designs that they use in Rebels. So they're saying, like, these people, which is sort of indication that they are, like, still around, that some of them broke their programming, but that they're the importance that they have to the Star Wars universe now as individuals, which is strange because they're clones. But
yeah, no, they do a really, Rebels in particular does a really good job of taking things from Clone Wars and the prequels and tying them to things that happen in the original trilogy. And even we suspect, although Dave is very quiet about it, we suspect we'll see stuff that happens after the original trilogy. We're hoping, there's already been a tie-in into The Mandalorian. For those of you who have seen it, the last episode, there is a weapon that appears in it, for no specific spoilers, but a weapon appears in it that's very prominent in Rebels, and actually is mentioned a bunch in Clone Wars. So, he's really working, and the TV shows are canon, so he's really working to tie at least the visual, like, the books are kind of a different thing, so there's a lot of Star Wars books, but at least the visual media of the Star Wars universe into one legit canon that makes sense from beginning to end.
Yeah.
This is making me think a little bit of the Picard series too, because from, like I said, I've only watched a couple of episodes, but it clearly is focusing a lot on the ethics of artificial life forms and stuff like that, which also makes me think that I read that Battlestar Galactica, the new one, the more recent one that came out whenever it was 10 years ago, is also now available. The whole series is available for free streaming, and I forget where.
I think just
I don't think it was a service. I think it was through their website.
Yeah, I think it's just sci-fi.com.
Sci-fi.com, but that was a really superb show that focused to a very large degree on all these issues of artificial life forms and cyborgs and the ethics of not knowing who is and who isn't. It's really interesting sci-fi that I think is kind of interesting today, because what we're dealing with now is sort of similar in that you're wondering who is infected, who is not, and the world is kind of divided in a weird way that you can't necessarily tell. So it raises some similar ethical issues to think about when a society has these kinds of problems.
Well, and it's also about people, at least for the beginning, who are trapped inside spaceships with no way out. And particularly in some episodes, a constant threat from the outside. So you might find some relevancy to your own life.
We're going parallels to both ethical and moral stuff that we're talking about, and also people stranded in places where they can't get out.
Exactly. Just when you're stuck places.
So I went, like, on those spaceships, did they have like streaming video to keep them amused all the time that they were there?
If they did, it would have the corners cut off, because the aesthetics of Battlestar Galactica was very about not square corners. It was all like octagons.
This also reminds me too of, talking about different places to get stuff. I noticed I was reading the Globe art section today, the weekend stuff, and there was a movie that I've been wanting to watch for quite a long time called, now I'm going to forget it, And Then We Danced, which is about, it takes place in Georgia, the country Georgia, Tbilisi, and it's about dancers there, and it's gotten really good reviews, and I've been wanting to watch it for a while, and you can't find it anywhere. And now I guess it's at the Coolidge Corner, and they're streaming it through their virtual Coolidge Corner service. So you do have to pay for it, but they seem to be showing a lot of independent films, and you can just watch it online through their website service, and then a portion of your ticket price goes to support the theater. So it's kind of fun to see all these alternative ways of providing access to content that you can't go to the movies anymore. And so I'm pleased to see so many places thinking creatively about ways to get stuff to people.
I'll say, while also being able to support local businesses that might not make it otherwise.
Yeah, if you're interested in independent film, I do know that Coolidge has a virtual screening room, and as does the Somerville Theater has a virtual screening room.
Okay.
And they're showing different things in it. They probably arranged to be showing different things. So if you're looking for movies like that, it's worth looking at them. And I think like 50% of your rental price goes back to
the theater, which is a really important way to support them.
And especially like Coolidge in particular, Coolidge's, and the Brattle is doing some too, more sort of, they're obviously a little bit more weird all the time, but they're doing a documentary. They have a documentary this weekend in a virtual screening room. And I know all of those places are paying all of their staff to stay home right now, which is huge and going to be a lot for a lot of those places. So any little bit helps them.
So it looks like I think we've kind of just about run out of time.
Okay.
So it looks like the idea is that we would, for those of you who know Book Buzz, where we do the same kind of thing to talk about books, I think we'll be alternating every other week. A group of your Beebe librarians will be doing books. And then on the alternate week, some of us will be doing video and TV and film in the hopes that we can keep providing good recommendations for you for as long as this lasts, which I hope isn't too much longer. But in the meantime, it's a great opportunity to catch up on content and share it with friends and family and the people in the community. So
and I think we'll probably be, I feel like we were pretty loose here in our, which I think is better for, it's like we want to be your recommendation and then maybe a chance to talk. And if you want to talk to us, we'll have a Facebook post, and please get in the comments.
Yes.
Yeah, so let us know what you guys have been watching and
Yes.
whether good or bad.
Yep.
Yes, we accept badness as well. I was going to say when we were talking about Disney Plus that I watched The Rocketeer, which I do think is a good movie.
I liked The Rocketeer.
Yeah, and excellent. It's on Disney Plus. And it's like one of those things that's kind of like hidden because it's not in Star Wars, but like it's down in there, and an excellent family film. You know, because who doesn't want a jetpack and to punch Nazis, which is what he does.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching. And so you could be finding this video in a number of places on our social media, but it will also be archived on our YouTube page, which you can visit, and you can also subscribe to, so that as we put up new content, you'll be able to get a notification every time there's a new video to watch from the library. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.